The Gray Fox is one of the most mysterious and infamous figures in all of Tamriel. We were originally introduced to him in Oblivion as the leader of the Thieves Guild, where he has sat at its head for over 300 years. Not as a mer with a long lifespan, but weirdly as a human. Some regard him as fact and some fiction, with many wanted letters spread throughout the Imperial City, and some news reports like this one. Gray Fox, man or myth? Is a so-called Thieves Guild member masterminding all the thefts in the Imperial City? Captain Harmonious Lex of the Imperial Watch seems to think so. When asked about the Thieves Guild and its mythical leader, the Gray Fox, the captain was quite emphatic. This one man is responsible for all crime in the city. The energetic and tenacious Captain Lex has therefore devoted himself to apprehending this masked menace. When questioned on the subject, Adamus Philada, Legion Commander and Captain Lex's immediate superior, had the following response. Ridiculous. The Gray Fox is but a fairy tale. There is no such thing as a Thieves Guild, and there never has been. Stories of an unstoppable thief called the Gray Fox have been circulating around the Imperial City for centuries. The stories claim he can turn invisible at will, shrink himself down to the size of a mouse, turn to mist and seep under locked doors, and perform any number of truly unbelievable feats. If even half of these stories are true, Captain Lex will have his hands full capturing the Gray Fox. If the player decides to follow the Oblivion Thieves Guild to its completion though, one of the best quest lines ever in Elder Scrolls, there's a big reveal at the end. The Gray Fox isn't actually just one person, but rather a large group of different people who have chosen to wear the cowl of the Gray Fox, otherwise known as Nocturnal's Cowl, giving them the power of the Daedric Prince's control of the sphere of night and darkness. You see, millennia ago, the first Thieves Guild leader ever actually managed to steal the cowl from Nocturnal, and thus she cursed it to forever banish its wearer, forcing all those who love and know them to forget about them forever. Even though the player is able to remove the curse from the cowl in Oblivion, it still has horrifying ramifications for the past. Who are these great thieves of history? And how do some people remember and tell stories of them? Could it be that the wearers of the cowl are nothing but figments of our imagination? And just how much of the Thieves Guild past can we truly trust now? We may never truly know. Everyone's favorite canine companion from Fallout 4, Dogmeat, is a super lovable character. He helps you find loot, he bites every enemy in your path, and most importantly, he's a good boy. But some Fallout fans have started to wonder if Dogmeat is even a real dog. You see, originally we find him outside the Red Rocket gas station at the very start of the game. And the fact that he is so well trained and immediately obedient and takes a liking to you is very weird. And as you play through more of the game, you start to notice more interesting oddities, like the fact that he takes no radiation damage. Almost every other animal in the game has become mutated from radiation poisoning, and other dogs that we meet in the game, like Rex, are, well, different. But Dogmeat seems to be an excellent fighter, perfectly trained, immune to radiation and plasma gunfire, and also one of the only dogs in the whole game that looks this pristine. Could it be that Dogmeat was actually sent from the Institute to guide you on your path to a secret hidden location? Maybe Dogmeat is actually a synth robot posing as man's best friend, all in a ploy to bring you to Sean at the Institute. But even if he is a conniving robot, he's still the cutest companion in all of Fallout. The origins of the precursors in Subnautica still remain largely a mystery to this day. It's assumed by many that the beings are nothing more than a long-lost civilization that used to rule the stars. After all, the word precursor itself means a person or thing that comes before another of the same kind. But wait, that's just it. If the precursors are the predecessors of something similar, then what is that similar thing? Well, based on everything we've seen in Subnautica this far, that something is most likely humans. After all, in-game we know from visions that precursors have similar colored vision to us, and on top of this, there are many ancient human weapons and artifacts and art we see inside of their structures. In fact, Based on the small amount of precursor language we do see in game, it seems to actually be heavily influenced by ancient Hindu texts. The fact that our PDA can translate some of their words with what seems to be no struggle at all also further backs up this idea even more. But if precursors actually are some sort of human beings, then how did they even get here? Well, this is where the theory gets really wild. What if planet 4546b is actually Earth itself? Most of humanity would have left the planet in search of other star systems, and these humans would have become the ones we know and love today in Subnautica, being led by massive transgov organizations like Altera and the Mongolian independent states. What about the humans that stayed on Earth though, and the ones that weren't lucky enough to leave? Could these be the actual original humans from Earth, the precursors for humanity as we know it today? Potentially these humans could have evolved down a different path and become the precursors themselves. But that begs the question, how would humans on a post-apocalyptic Earth become so much more advanced than humans that were able to get away? Well, maybe it's because the precursors are actually those same Earth humans from the future. That would also explain how planet 4546b could be Earth, as over countless years another moon could have come into contact with the planet's orbit, and that could have caused sea levels to rise dramatically, hence why the world of Subnautica is almost entirely covered in water. Potentially the precursors are nothing more than the original human race, far into the future, and they are trying to travel back in time to the original outbreak of the Kara to stop it. And as part of that mission, they are trying to send signals back to the other sect of humanity that originally left Earth in order to help stop the end of the universe as we know it. Maybe by taking the Altera PDA with us through the portal to the precursors at the end of Subnautica Below Zero, we are actually giving old humanity a way to find the more advanced new breed. If we take this all into account, that would mean that Subnautica is actually an intense and deep science fiction epic about a hyper-futuristic humanity that must travel back in time to alert another sect of humanity that has evolved in their own way about the biggest danger the galaxy has ever seen in an attempt to lead the human race to salvation. Or it's a game about cute little underwater fish. Don't ruin this for me. The Keepers are one of the most mysterious beings that we meet in our entire time in the Mass Effect games. They're the strange little guys on the Citadel that keep it pristine and in good condition. And as we learn at the end of Mass Effect 1, they are also the ones who activate the Citadel mass relay to try and let the Reapers into Council space. In multiple games, we are also able to try and study the Keepers more, but find no answers. They are harboring a peculiar genetic makeup, and seem not to respond in any way to others on the Citadel, simply working on tasks that sometimes seem unclear. One of the most damning scenes in the original trilogy, though, is actually something we see in the Shadow Broker DLC for Mass Effect 2. You see, after defeating the Shadow Broker, and instilling Liara with her new duties as the galaxy's most well-involved benefactor, you get the chance to look through some of the old files that the Shadow Broker had that were classified as top secret and have huge lore implications. Some of these show scenes of espionage early in the previous games or big reveals for certain characters. But the most peculiar videotape we see is nothing more than a Keeper locked away in a small room. So what is this Keeper on the videotape hiding? Where is this facility? And what exactly is going on here? It's the only one of the videotapes that needs more explanation than simply what we see on screen. You see, these files and tapes are only for the most important and top secret things throughout the galaxy, so there must be more going on here than meets the eye. But this is all we got, and because of that, the mystery begins to get even bigger. Are there people that have discovered the true nature of the Keepers? And if they have, what does it all mean? Throughout the lands between, we find many so-called Finger Maidens, who through the guidance of the Two Fingers, who serve the greater will, lead many great warriors and tarnish through their grace to the championing of the Elden Ring. But in the start of the game, you may have noticed a dead maiden sitting against a wall in a pool of blood in the church that we start in. We know this lady is a maiden because we are able to use her blood to soak Mog, Lord of Blood's favor in game, which is only activated with a maiden's blood, per the item description. So the question then becomes, what is this maiden doing here? And as we are reminded by multiple characters throughout the game, we are maidenless. So could this maiden potentially have been our guide that was killed right before the beginning of the game? There are endless theories as to who could have killed our maiden, including some of the demigods trying to remove your guide, or the scion just outside the church being the culprit. But for me, one of the most interesting has to be White Mask Vare, that annoying degenerate we meet when first stepping into the world. Without you even telling him, Vare is immediately aware of the fact that you have no maiden, and he makes fun of you for it, relentlessly. But even more damning, if you zoom in on his hands when we first meet him, they are covered in blood. Could it be that White Mask Vare murdered your maiden just before the game began, and now knowing where you will eventually come, is waiting for you to greet you and act as if nothing happened? The curiosity then would become his motive. After all, any good murder needs one. Well, as we know from discussions with Vare later in the game, he wants you to join the order he is a part of, the Knights of the Modwin dynasty. And in order to do that, he claims a member must kill their maiden, but that any maiden will do and suffice. So did Mare murder your maiden in order to grant himself access to this dynasty? And if he did, what other forces are at play? Could Melina somehow be involved? After all, if this was your maiden that was killed, Melina is the one who mysteriously comes to your rescue and acts as your maiden for the rest of the game. Whether or not Vare is the true killer, or if it really is your maiden, it seems to be heavily implied throughout the game that something more sinister is going on behind Melina, Vare, and the convoluted start to the game. The Perales storyline in Cyberpunk is a personal favorite for many in the community. You originally receive a call from Elizabeth, a woman asking for help, and upon meeting with her and her husband Jefferson in person, you come to the realization that they are in grave danger. And because Jefferson is running to be mayor, it's important that you get to the bottom of it quickly. You see, recently Jefferson awoke in the middle of the night and heard people inside his penthouse. He got his gun and tried to look around, but was immediately knocked out and doesn't remember anything else. Elizabeth thinks her husband is being paranoid and wants to help, but Jefferson is sure something is up. And as you snoop around their house, it is slowly unraveled that they have been monitored this entire time by a corporation they are now paying to protect them, SSRI, a lesser known and new protection firm, similar to Night Corp. Hidden away in the middle of the Perales' home is a secret monitoring facility where SSRI has been watching every move the Perales have been making. Someone is after them, and in an attempt to figure out who, you track down a van nearby that is sending a signal to the house. And when you get there, after clearing out a group of unknown bad guys, you hack into the van and discover that this unknown group is actually in the process of mind controlling the Perales. The reason they have been forgetting things and not feeling like themselves is because programs are being executed on their local chips to slowly transform them into puppets. You let Elizabeth know, and Jefferson, depending on what you choose to do, and the quest ends there, with a mysterious figure warning you over a call to stop looking into what you have discovered. But you see, at the end of the questline, you also may notice a man off in the distance staring at you. A man the Cyberpunk community affectionately calls Mr. Blue Eyes. This man has been watching you throughout the entire questline from different vantage points, and upon finding him at the end, he vanishes out of thin air. But we learn something about him from that short glimpse we get. Sitting on his finger is a ring that seems harmless at first. However, upon closer inspection, it becomes clear we have seen this ring before in many places. In fact, in some of the stories on this list before. Characters like Gary the Prophet, the monks praying to the magenta statue, and some higher level and shady characters we come across throughout the entire game. Furthermore, in one of the endings of the game, we actually get to meet Mr. Blue Eyes, and he tasks us with going to the Crystal Palace in space on a death mission, where the game abruptly ends as you float towards the structure. This man is clearly in the know about many things, and has friends in many high places and power we are not yet aware of. And the connections between the conspiracies of Cyberpunk and this blue-eyed man start to paint a picture that there may be something more going on in this universe. As stated before, Gary the Prophet and the magenta statues with the monks praying to them are all pointing to some sort of alien conspiracy on the net, or even Bartmoss, who is alluded to as having a golden ring of similar sorts to the blue-eyed man in one shard, claims aliens have taken over. Could this blue-eyed man, and all those with these rings of power praying to these mysterious statues, somehow be connected? Is there a conspiracy going on so grand in Cyberpunk that the entire future of the franchise could be dependent on it? It seems every important character is connected to this mystery somehow, and we may have some clues as to how when investigating the game's files for Mr. Blue Eyes. You see, his undershirt is actually referenced in the game files as man_average _Q115_blackhand_D. The reason this is so interesting is because Morgan Blackhand is a main character from the original Cyberpunk tabletop lore, who took place in the Arasaka nuclear bombing with Johnny Silverhand decades ago. But in the game, we never meet him. Could Blackhand somehow be a part of this ultimate alien conspiracy, mind control takeover of the net that will result in the complete annihilation of the human race as we know it? Potentially a story for a future Cyberpunk game or DLC.